They laughed at the quiet woman on the shooting range, until the system said two chilling words, "Widow Mark." What happened next left trained soldiers standing in silence. "You're in the wrong place, lady. This is a training range, not a tourist spot." A group of young soldiers laughed as the small woman stepped onto the range wearing a silver windbreaker. She said nothing, just walked to the target selection machine, placed her hand on the screen. The system hummed. Lights turned red. Call sign Widow Mark reactivated. The entire range fell silent. Her name was Maren Weiss, 35 years old, European, long black hair tied low, small frame, calm eyes that seemed to hold distant storms. She wore simple jeans and a silver windbreaker, carrying a worn leather bag that looked like it had seen better days. Maren arrived at the Western Training Center with civilian ID, registering for recreational shooting. The facility was bustling with activity. Military personnel, police officers, and weekend warriors all honing their skills. The intake officer, a young corporal named Jenkins, asked, "Have you ever shot before?" She smiled gently, "Not as much as you might think." A group of young soldiers behind her burst out laughing. Private Rodriguez, barely 21, nudged his buddy. "If she hits a target, I'll go work kitchen duty forever." Maren didn't react, just stood at the back of the line holding leather gloves, silent as morning mist. Her posture was relaxed, but there was something in the way she carried herself. A subtle confidence that spoke of experiences far removed from this civilian setting. The soldiers continued their mockery. One pointed at her small frame. "Look at those arms. Can she even hold a rifle steady?" Another chimed in, "Maybe she's here for the Instagram photos. You know how civilians are, probably wants to pose with some weapons for her social media." A third soldier, Sergeant Miller, joined the conversation. $20 says she can't even load a magazine properly." Maren waited patiently. Her breathing was controlled, measured. Something about her stillness made the air feel heavier, but the young soldiers were too caught up in their jokes to notice. She observed everything, the layout of the range, the equipment, the people. It was automatic, like breathing. The range supervisor, a gruff man named Carson with 30 years of service, glanced at her paperwork. "Says here you want to try long-range shooting. That's advanced stuff, ma'am. Maybe start with something simpler. We've got some nice .22s that might be more your speed." "I'll be fine," Maren said quietly, her voice carrying a certainty that Carson almost missed. Carson shrugged. "Your money. Just don't blame us when you can't hit the broadside of a barn. And please, for the love of all that's holy, don't point that thing at anyone." More laughter echoed through the facility. Maren's fingers traced the edge of her gloves. A nervous habit or perhaps something else entirely. The gloves were well worn, made of quality leather that had been broken in through years of use. When Maren's turn came, she didn't choose a weapon from the rack like everyone else. Instead, she walked directly to the system's control panel, a sophisticated piece of equipment that managed target selection, range parameters, and recorded performance data. Without hesitation, she placed her hand on the biometric scanner. The system froze for a moment, processing something it hadn't encountered in years. Then suddenly, it switched to red mode, alarms softly chiming. The screen displayed in bold letters, "Biosignature matched. Widow Mark. Status. Reactivated." A staff member stepped back, his face draining of color. "Widow Mark, I thought that was just a legend. Isn't that a deep ops unit code?" An officer who had been reviewing paperwork in the back office came running out. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, a man who had seen action in 3 different theaters, looked at Maren and his face went pale. You're the sole survivor from Red Zone Sector 4. People began whispering among themselves. She's the ghost who led an entire squad out of hell, then vanished from all records. The young soldiers who had been laughing suddenly found their voices caught in their throats. The atmosphere shifted like a storm front moving in, heavy with tension and sudden respect. Carson checked his computer terminal, his hand shaking slightly. "Ma'am, this system, it's classified military grade. It shouldn't even recognize civilian prints. Hell, it shouldn't even be running those protocols anymore." Marin looked at the screen with those same calm eyes, showing no surprise at the system's response. Sometimes systems remember what people try to forget. A senior instructor, Staff Sergeant Martinez, approached cautiously. He'd been in the service for 20 years, seen things that haunted his dreams and left scars on his soul. Widowmaker was a designation for solo operators who did things others couldn't survive. Operations that were so classified they weren't supposed to exist. The computer kept updating, automatically displaying information that shouldn't have been accessible. Last active, 2012. Mission status, classified. Survival rate, 100% for protected personnel. Threat assessment, maximum. Private Rodriguez, the one who had joked about kitchen duty, stepped forward tentatively. "Ma'am, we didn't know." Marin turned to him, her voice gentle but carrying an authority that made everyone listen. "You weren't supposed to know. That was the point. The best operations are the ones that never happened." The range had filled with an odd tension. Other shooters had stopped their practice, drawn by the commotion. Everyone seemed to sense they were witnessing something extraordinary, something that would change how they viewed the world. Martinez pulled up more files on his tablet, his security clearance allowing him access to fragments of information. It says here you led rescue operations in zones where satellites couldn't even maintain contact. How is that possible? You learn to work with what you have, Marin replied simply. And you learn that sometimes the most important missions are the ones where nobody comes home as a hero. The system beeped again, offering options that hadn't been available moments before. Tactical protocols available. Authorize advanced training scenarios. Carson looked at the screen, then at Marin. Confusion and respect warring in his expression. "Ma'am, these protocols, they're above my clearance level. I can't even see what they contain. The system is offering training scenarios that I've never seen before." Hayes stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Those protocols were developed for situations where conventional military tactics failed. They're designed for operators who work alone in environments where backup isn't coming." Marin removed her gloves slowly, revealing hands that told a story of their own. Calloused in specific places, small scars that spoke of years handling weapons and equipment. She picked up a standard rifle from the rack, made no adjustments to the scope, didn't check the balance, didn't even examine the weapon closely. She calmly said, "I just want to check if I can still maintain 800-meter accuracy." The range fell silent. 800 meters was expert-level shooting, the kind of distance that required years of training and perfect conditions. Most recreational shooters couldn't hit a target at half that distance. Over the next 10 minutes, she fired 6 shots. Each one pierced the center target with mechanical precision. There was no hesitation, no adjustment between shots. Just a steady rhythm that spoke of muscle memory so ingrained it had become instinct. With each trigger pull, the screen automatically updated. Tactical pattern detected. Widow mark confirmed. Shooting pattern matches historical data. The training supervisor, a man who had trained Olympic shooters, bowed his head and stepped forward. "I once studied shooting from documents labeled Technique Number 7 Ghost Pattern. That was yours." Marin looked into the distance, her voice carrying the weight of memories. I don't keep achievements, I just keep the habit of not letting teammates die in front of me. People began frantically searching the system records, their security clearances revealing fragments of a story that had been deliberately buried. Marin had been the commander of Deep Ops Unit Wolf Echo, erased from the system because no survivors could be confirmed after their final mission. Today, the system reactivated because for the first time in 12 years, her biological signature reappeared in an official database. But the story went deeper than anyone expected. Martinez found classified fragments that made his hands shake. Wolf Echo was sent into zones where other units had a 90% casualty rate. Under Widowmark's command, they had 0 friendly casualties across 14 missions. How is that possible? Carson asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Marin set down the rifle with the same care she had shown throughout the demonstration. You learn to see death coming before it sees you, and you learn that sometimes the only way to save everyone is to walk into the dark, alone. The young soldier who had mocked her earlier was now standing at attention, his face pale. Ma'am, what happened to Wolf Echo? Marion's eyes grew distant, as if she were seeing ghosts that only she could perceive. We were sent to extract a diplomat's daughter from a war zone. Intelligence was wrong. It was a trap. The enemy knew we were coming. She paused, her voice becoming quieter, more controlled. I ordered my team to fall back to the secondary position, told them I would create a distraction and meet them at the rendezvous point in 6 hours. But you didn't make it to the rendezvous, Martinez said, understanding dawning on his face. I made it, but I couldn't let them find the extraction point. So I led the enemy away, deeper into the zone, making them think the entire team was moving in that direction. By the time I fought my way out 3 days later, my team had been declared Kia. The mission was classified at the highest levels. I was officially dead. The computer screen flickered, displaying information that shouldn't have been accessible. Mission report: extraction successful. Civilian casualties 0. Friendly casualties 0. Operator status: MIA. Presumed Kia. Hayes stepped forward, his voice filled with awe. But you survived. You fought your way out of enemy territory alone. Surviving isn't the same as living, Marin replied, her words carrying a weight that made everyone in the room feel the gravity of what she had sacrificed. For 12 years I've been a ghost. No identity, no records, no home. Just moving from place to place, making sure the skills don't rust, making sure I remember why they matter. The young soldiers looked at each other, shame evident on their faces. They had mocked someone who had sacrificed everything for people she would never meet, who had chosen to carry the burden of being forgotten so that others could live. Rodriguez stepped forward, his voice breaking. Ma'am, I'm sorry, we didn't know. You weren't supposed to know, Marin said gently. That's what makes it work. CTA Comment Act 3. If you owe someone a thank you, right, I'm in debt. Marin declined the training invitation that Hayes offered, the chance to return to active duty, the opportunity to reclaim her official identity. She only asked to retrieve one item from the weapons storage facility, a memorial bullet engraved with "Save one person." That's enough. It was a custom round, never fired, that her team had made for her after their 13th successful mission. She had carried it through every operation after that, a reminder of what mattered most. Before leaving, she left a handwritten note on Carson's desk. If you meet someone who speaks little, don't laugh. They might have said too much to people who stayed behind. The quietest person in the room might be the one who has screamed the loudest when it mattered most. 1 week later, shooting range number 9 was marked with a small plaque, Widow Mark, the one who needs no orders, the one who lets no one die if she still draws breath. The young soldiers never forgot that day. They began treating every visitor with respect, knowing that heroes don't always look like what the movies show us. Rodriguez transferred to search and rescue operations, inspired by the idea that saving lives was more important than taking them. Carson kept Marin's note in his desk drawer, reading it whenever he felt tempted to judge someone by their appearance. Whenever new recruits came through, he would tell them skills can be taught, character is earned through choices no one else will ever know about. Martinez retired 6 months later, but not before adding a new section to the training manual. Remember that the most dangerous person in the room is often the quietest one, not because they're hiding something dark, but because they've already seen enough darkness for several lifetimes. The system kept her record active, though she never returned. Sometimes late at night, Martinez would wonder where she was, what she was doing. He hoped she had found some peace, some way to live with the weight of being a ghost. But in his heart, he knew people like Marin Weiss don't retire. They just find new ways to stand between the innocent and the darkness. They become the guardians that nobody knows about, the watchers who protect from the shadows. Hayes submitted a report through classified channels, recommending that the Widowmaker protocols be preserved and that any future operators matching her profile be treated with the highest respect and consideration. The note he received back was simple. Understood. There are others we're watching. The legend of Widow Mark lived on. Not in official records, but in the hearts of those who understood that true heroism doesn't need recognition, it just needs to be. CTA Comment Act 4. Type, I will live with kindness, if you believe silence is sometimes the highest medal. Marin didn't shout, didn't raise her fist. But one touch from her was enough for the entire system to recognize her. There are warriors, no one calls them heroes because they don't come back to tell the story. They only come back to make sure others get to live. In a world full of noise, if you meet someone who doesn't boast, be careful. They might have saved more lives than you'll ever know. Live with kindness, and never laugh at someone just because they don't look like a typical hero. The real heroes are the ones who never needed to prove they were heroes. They just lived it quietly, in moments when no one was watching and no one would ever know. Remember Marin Weiss. Remember that strength isn't always loud. Courage isn't always obvious. And the most important battles are often fought by people whose names will never be in the history books. Be kind. You never know whose life depends on it. She never asked for glory. She just made sure no one died on her watch. Remember, the quietest person in the room may be the one who saved it.